Old black trash like you don't belong in banks. You belong begging on sidewalks. Gregory Harlan's voice cut through the bank lobby as he snatched the check from Loretta Mae Johnson's hands. He tore it in half with a sharp rip, then again, slower, letting the paper shred beneath his fingers. 70 years old and still trying to scam decent people, he barked, motioning security closer as if she might lunge. His cologne clung to the air, thick with contempt. Loretta didn't speak. She stood there, spine locked, hands folded, eyes forward, swallowing the humiliation whole. Harlan smirked, convinced he'd crushed another nobody, never realizing the quiet man watching from the corner already held his job, his future, and his name in his hands. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. Monday morning sunlight streamed through Harlan Community Bank's tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. Loretta Mae Johnson stood just inside the entrance, her Sunday-best coat still crisp despite the muggy morning air. The settlement check felt heavy in her purse. Not from its weight, but from what it meant. This money would save her home. She'd chosen Monday morning carefully. The lobby was quiet, with only a few customers scattered among the rope-lined lanes, perfect for handling business with dignity and privacy. Loretta straightened her back, smoothed her gloves, and approached the teller counter. Nina Alvarez looked up with a warm smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" Before Loretta could answer, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Gregory Harlan emerged from his office, his shoes clicking against the marble floor. He wore an expensive suit that somehow made him look more predatory than professional. His eyes fixed on Loretta like a hawk spotting a mouse. "Let's see." He picked up the deposit slip she'd carefully filled out. "Is it Loretta? Loretta?" He drew out each wrong pronunciation, making sure everyone could hear. "Loretta Mae Johnson," she corrected softly but firmly. "Like it's written there." "You'll need to speak up," Harlan said, raising his voice as if she were deaf. "For the record." Heat crept up Loretta's neck as other customers turned to stare. She'd faced this kind of treatment before, the deliberate misunderstandings, the performative confusion. But knowing the game didn't make it hurt less. "I'm here to cash this check," she said, maintaining her composure. She reached into her purse for the carefully protected document. "Oh? A check?" Harlan's voice carried to every corner of the lobby. "And where did you get this check?" Nina tried to intervene. "Mr. Harlan, I can help Mrs. Johnson with Miss Alvarez." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'll handle this situation." The threat in his tone made Nina shrink back, though her face showed clear distress. Harlan turned back to Loretta. "Security!" He gestured to the guard near the door. "Please, come closer. Standard procedure, you understand?" The guard moved to stand uncomfortably close to Loretta, though she hadn't done anything threatening. She was a 72-year-old woman in church gloves, for heaven's sake. "Now then," Harlan continued, "we need to verify some things. Rather thoroughly." He emphasized each word like he was speaking to a child. "Where exactly did you get this check?" "It's a settlement check," Loretta explained, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Everything's properly endorsed." "A settlement? My. Harlan raised his eyebrows theatrically. "And you're sure about that? We get so many people in here with stories." The other customers in line shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others watched with that horrible mixture of pity and distance that burned worse than outright cruelty. "Empty your purse, please." Harlan's smile widened. "On the counter. For verification." "My purse?" Loretta clutched it closer. "But the check is right here." "Bank policy," he said smoothly. "We need to verify you haven't brought in any suspicious items. You do want to follow proper procedure, don't you?" Loretta's hands trembled as she opened her purse. One by one, she placed her belongings on the cold marble counter. Her worn wallet, a pack of peppermints, tissues, her bus pass, reading glasses in their scratched case, and her small Bible with its familiar leather cover. Harlan picked up each item, making a show of examining them. He held up her bus pass. My, taking public transportation today? No car? The whispers started. Loretta felt each one like a pinprick. Her cheeks burned as Harlan continued his performance, holding up her peppermints like they were evidence in a trial. Nina stood frozen at her station, her hands clenched into fists below the counter where Harlan couldn't see. Her eyes met Loretta's, full of helpless apology. "Well," Harlan said finally, "let's see this. Check. You're so certain about." Loretta's fingers trembled as she lifted the check from her purse. It was crisp and clean, every detail perfect, every endorsement in place. This check meant keeping her home, the house her Thomas had built with his own hands. She'd rather cut off her own fingers than let anything happen to it. Harlan held out his hand, palm up, that cruel smile still playing on his lips. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. "Hand it here," he said, speaking to his audience as much as to her. "Let's see what kind of story this tells us." The sunlight through the windows felt colder now. Loretta looked at Harlan's outstretched hand and saw what was coming, could read it in the malice behind his polite smile, in the way he'd positioned himself to make sure everyone could see what happened next. But she had no choice. The check was her last hope. She extended her hand. The check caught between her trembling fingers, moving as slowly as she dared. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect this precious piece of paper that meant the difference between keeping and losing her home. But Harlan's fingers were already closing around the edge of the check, his smile growing wider, more predatory. "Let's see what we have here," he said, his voice dripping with false concern as he took the check from her grasp. Harlan's glass office felt like a cage. Loretta sat rigid in the hard visitor's chair while he towered over her, positioned between her and the door. The morning sun through the windows cast his shadow across her lap like a prison bar. "Mrs. Johnson, was it?" Harlan leaned against his desk, carefully pronouncing her name correctly, now that they were alone. "Let's discuss some concerns about risk management and protocol." Loretta's gloved hands gripped her purse. The leather creaked under her fingers. Through the glass walls, she could see other customers trying not to stare while pretending to fill out deposit slips. "I have all the proper identification," Loretta said, reaching for her wallet. "And the endorsement is exactly as required." "Oh, identification." Harlan's laugh was soft and cruel. "This goes beyond simple ID checks. We have sophisticated fraud prevention measures in place." He emphasized each word like he was explaining something to a child. "People don't just walk in here with settlement checks without raising red flags." Outside the office, Nina Alvarez moved toward them with a concerned expression. Harlan shot her a warning look. "Miss Alvarez," he called through the glass, voice sharp. "Stay in your lane. This is a management issue." Nina froze, then retreated to her station, shoulders tight with tension. The security guard shifted closer to the office door, hand resting meaningfully on his belt. "Now then," Harlan continued, picking up the check with two fingers like it might be contaminated. "Let's talk about where this really came from." "It's a legitimate settlement check," Loretta explained, fighting to keep her voice steady. "From the class action case. Everything's documented." "Ah, yes," Harlan interrupted, sighing dramatically. "There's always a story, isn't there? People like this always have quite the tale to tell." He raised his voice slightly, ensuring the lobby could hear. "Some mysterious settlement, some convenient windfall." Loretta's cheeks burned. "People like this," hung in the air like poison. She'd heard that tone before, seen that dismissive look in other offices, other buildings, but she hadn't expected it here, not with her perfectly valid check and carefully assembled paperwork. "Sir," she tried again, "if you'll just verify the issuing bank." "I am verifying," Harlan cut her off. He held the check up to the light, making a show of examining it. His eyes locked onto her signature, and he circled it with his finger. "Interesting penmanship. Very creative." The insinuation was clear. Loretta pulled out her driver's license, bank statements, and the settlement documentation she'd brought just in case. Everything matches. You can scan it through the system. The system? Harlan's smile widened. Mrs. Johnson, I am the system in this branch. Every verification, every approval, every decision flows through me. He tapped his nameplate on the desk. Branch Manager Gregory Harlan. Perhaps you'd like to speak to my supervisor? Yes, please, Loretta said, hope flickering briefly. Harlan's smile turned predatory. You're looking at him. The security guard shifted closer to the door, his presence a silent threat. Through the glass, Loretta could see Nina watching helplessly, her hands twisted together beneath her counter. Let me explain how this works, Harlan said, picking up the check again. He began folding it slowly, precisely, like he was creating origami from her hopes. When paperwork seems suspicious, and believe me, this is very suspicious, we have procedures. That check is my property, Loretta protested, her voice stronger now despite her racing heart. You have no right. Rights? Harlan laughed, the sound sharp and cold. Let's discuss rights. I have the right, no, the obligation, to protect this institution from fraud. From people who think they can walk in here with elaborate stories and questionable documents. He was performing now, pitching his voice to carry through the glass. The lobby had gone quiet, everyone pretending not to watch the drama unfolding in the fishbowl office. I've been doing this job for 20 years, Harlan continued, still folding the check with deliberate precision. I can spot a problem from a mile away. And you, Mrs. Johnson, are definitely a problem. Loretta's hands clenched in her lap. She thought of her home, of Thomas's careful craftsmanship in every beam and board. She thought of the property tax notice, of the lien threat looming like a storm cloud. All her hope was in that check Harlan was treating like scrap paper. Please, she said quietly, hating the tremor in her voice. That money is for my home. Everything is legitimate. Oh, the home card. Harlan's voice dripped with mock sympathy. Another familiar story. Always some crisis. Always some desperate need. He held up the now folded check between thumb and forefinger. Would you like to know what happens to suspicious paperwork in my branch? The guard moved even closer, blocking Loretta's view of Nina and the lobby. Harlan stepped forward, using his height to loom over Loretta's seated form. His smile had turned to something ugly and triumphant. Watch closely, he announced, holding the check up like a trophy. This is what happens when paperwork doesn't add up. Harlan's hand clamped onto Loretta's elbow as he guided her from his office. His grip was gentle enough to seem proper, but firm enough to control her every step. The morning sun through the bank's tall windows made the marble floor gleam like ice, and Loretta's sensible shoes clicked softly as she walked. The lobby had grown fuller since she'd arrived. A line of customers stretched from the teller's counter, their faces a mix of impatience and uncomfortable curiosity. Nina Alvarez stood at her station, her fingers hovering above her keyboard, as she watched the scene unfold. Everyone, if I could have your attention, Harlan announced, his voice carrying across the polished surfaces. He released Loretta's arm, but stayed close, like a guard escorting a prisoner. This is an important teaching moment about bank security. Loretta's throat tightened. The weight of all those staring eyes made her church gloves feel too tight, her best wool coat too warm. She'd dressed carefully that morning, choosing clothes that spoke of dignity and respect. Now those same clothes felt like a costume that fooled no one. Mrs. Johnson here, Harlan continued, gesturing to her like she was an exhibit, has presented us with what she claims is a settlement check. He held up the folded paper between two fingers. A rather large sum, allegedly for property taxes on a house she claims to own. It is my house, Loretta said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. My husband Thomas built it himself. We've lived there 43 years, and all the paperwork is in order. A few people in line shifted uncomfortably. An elderly white woman clutched her deposit slip tighter. A young man in a business suit suddenly found his phone fascinating. Ma'am, Harlan's voice dripped false patience. "This check is not acceptable." He unfolded it partially, displaying the amount to the crowd without showing the legitimate signatures and security features. "Look at this figure, everyone. Does this seem reasonable?" "Those funds are from the settlement case," Loretta explained, fighting to keep her composure. She'd practiced this, rehearsed staying calm no matter what. "It's for the taxes, to save my home." "That's what they all say," Harlan interrupted, smiling broadly. His teeth gleamed as white as his starched collar. "Every single time someone tries this, there's always a sad story about a house, or medical bills, or some terrible emergency." The security guard moved closer, his shoes squeaking on the marble. His hand rested casually on his belt, close to his radio. The message was clear. Any reaction from Loretta would be treated as a threat. Nina's face had gone pale behind her counter. Her hands trembled slightly above her keyboard, but she didn't move. Couldn't move. The weight of Harlan's authority pressed down on everyone like a lead blanket. "Let me show you how we handle suspicious documents," Harlan announced. He held the check up high, making sure everyone could see. Then, with precise, deliberate movements, he gripped the paper with both hands. The sound of tearing filled the sudden silence. Clean, sharp, final. Loretta's breath caught in her throat. The check, her salvation, her hope, her proof, split in two pieces. Harlan wasn't finished. His smile never wavered as he lined up the halves and tore again. 4 pieces now, the numbers and signatures fragmented like broken promises. But still, he continued, his manicured fingers reducing her future to confetti. "This," he declared, "is how we protect our institution from fraud." The shreds of paper fluttered down like snow, scattering across the marble floor. Some pieces landed on Loretta's shoes, sensible black leather she'd polished that morning. A few strips drifted under the velvet ropes that guided the line. Someone near the back of the line laughed nervously. Another person whispered something that made their companion snicker. The elderly white woman clutched her purse closer, as if Loretta's presence might somehow contaminate her own transaction. Nina stood frozen at her station, her face a mask of helpless distress. Her fingers still hovered over her keyboard, but her eyes were locked on the scattered pieces of Loretta's check. Behind her, another teller quickly looked away, pretending to organize deposit slips. The security guard shifted his weight, ready to move if Loretta showed any sign of what they clearly expected. Anger, hysteria, the kind of reaction that would justify removing her forcefully. They wanted her to break, to prove them right about who and what she was. But Loretta didn't scream. She didn't rage or threaten. She stood perfectly still, her gloved hands clasped together to hide their trembling. The pain in her chest felt physical, like Harlan had torn something inside her instead of just the check. Each breath had to push through layers of shame and shock and disbelief. Near the brochure rack, half hidden by a display about retirement planning, a man in a plain dark suit watched the scene. He was quiet, unremarkable, the kind of person your eyes slid past in a crowd. As Loretta stared at the scattered pieces of paper, this man carefully bent down. His movements were subtle, almost casual, as he picked up a single shred of the destroyed check and slipped it into his pocket. That man was Darius Johnson, though no one in the bank knew it yet. The bank's glass doors swung shut behind Loretta as she stepped into the late morning sunlight. She moved with careful dignity, back straight, chin lifted, though her gloved hands still trembled. The brightness hit her eyes hard after the dim lobby, and she blinked rapidly, fighting tears she refused to shed. "Ma'am?" A gentle voice spoke from behind her. "Would you like some water?" Darius Johnson stood there, holding out a small bottle he'd grabbed from the bank's courtesy station. He kept his movements slow and respectful, giving her space. His plain dark suit and unassuming presence made him look like any other customer, though his eyes held a sharp intelligence that missed nothing. "Thank you, young man." Loretta accepted the water but didn't open it. Her voice was steady despite everything. "I appreciate your kindness." They moved away from the entrance, finding shade beneath a young maple tree. Through the bank's windows, Gregory Harlan watched them from his desk, satisfaction plain on his face. He made a show of straightening papers, arranging them like trophies. "Do you have copies of the check?" Darius asked quietly. "Or documentation about the settlement?" Loretta's shoulders tightened. "I have everything at home. Files, letters, all of it. But the deadline for the property taxes—" She pressed her lips together, composing herself. "They know that. They know exactly what they're doing. Tell me about the settlement, if you don't mind." Darius's tone remained gentle, but his eyes never stopped moving, noting security camera angles, checking sight lines through windows, mapping the lobby's layout. "It's from the discrimination case," Loretta explained. "All those extra fees they charged us over the years, steering people like me into certain kinds of loans." Her voice carried decades of careful observation. "They lost the lawsuit, had to pay out, but now they're making sure we can't actually get what's owed." Darius nodded, his expression neutral but attentive. "And the property taxes? Due by the end of the month." Loretta's fingers tightened on the water bottle. "My Thomas, my late husband, he built that house himself. 43 years we've lived there. Never missed a payment until—" She straightened her spine. "I won't lose it. I can't." Through the glass, they could see Nina Alvarez at her teller station, her movements stiff with suppressed emotion. Harlan passed behind her, saying something that made her shoulders hunch. The security guard had resumed his post, but his eyes kept drifting toward the windows. "Would you be all right here for a moment?" Darius asked. "I need to check something inside." Loretta nodded, finding a bench in the shade. She pulled out her phone, a simple flip model that made calling easier for her arthritis. Her fingers hovered over the keypad as Darius returned to the lobby. Inside, Darius moved with practiced casualness. He noted the security camera's positions, 2 above the teller line, 1 covering the entrance, another aimed at the desk where Harlan had performed his verification. The trash bin where the shredded check had landed sat conspicuously empty now. Recently changed, based on the fresh liner. Nina caught his eye as he passed her station. She glanced quickly at Harlan's office, then scribbled something on a deposit slip. When Darius approached her window, she slid it toward him with trembling fingers. "Sir," she whispered, "this isn't the first time. He calls them verifications, but—" She swallowed hard. "Always older customers. Always certain neighborhoods." Darius pocketed the note with a slight nod. "Thank you." Outside, Loretta stared at her phone's glowing screen. Her son's number was displayed, but her thumb hesitated over the call button. She'd raised him to be strong, to succeed, to make his own way. Asking for help felt like admitting defeat. Finally, she pressed dial. It went to voicemail after 4 rings. "Darius," she began, her voice soft but clear. "It's Mama. She paused, choosing words carefully. "There's been some trouble at the bank, with the settlement check." Another pause. "I know you're busy with your work, but I could use your help. When you have time." She ended the call quickly, before emotion could crack her composure. Darius watched from the doorway, his face impossible to read. He returned to his car, parked in the far corner of the lot, where cameras couldn't catch his license plate. The leather seats were cool despite the warming day. His phone felt heavy in his hand as he composed a text to his audit team lead. The message was simple: preserve. He looked back at the bank. Harlan had moved to the window, straightening his tie in the reflection. Nina kept her head down at her station, shoulders tense, and on the bench, Loretta sat perfectly straight, hands folded in her lap, face turned to the sun, refusing to be diminished even as her world threatened to crumble. The shred of check in Darius's pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. One piece of evidence, one fragment of a larger pattern. His mother's dignity was worth more than all the marble and glass that housed men like Gregory Harlan. Loretta's house stood quiet in the late afternoon light. The porch steps creaked familiar notes as she climbed them, her church gloves still clutched in one hand. Inside, the emptiness felt heavier than usual. She hung her coat with precise movements, smoothing the fabric like her mama had taught her. In the kitchen, she filled the kettle with shaking hands. The routine of making tea, her own blend of mint and chamomile, usually settled her nerves. Not today. The morning's humiliation clung to her like a shadow, making even familiar tasks feel strange and uncertain. The tax notice lay on her kitchen table where she'd left it that morning, crisp white paper stating cold numbers. She touched it gently, as if it might dissolve like the shreds of her check had in Harlan's hands. The due date stared back at her. 2 weeks. The settlement money was supposed to fix this, was supposed to make things right. The kettle whistled, sharp and insistent. As she poured water over the tea bag, her phone rang. The number showed as Harlan Community Bank. "Mrs. Johnson?" A clipped voice, too efficient. "This is account services. We're calling about some irregularities." Loretta's hand tightened on her mug. "What irregularities?" "Your escrow account has been flagged for review. We show failed automatic payments and—" "Failed?" Loretta cut in, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Those payments are set up through direct deposit. They've never failed before." Nevertheless, the voice grew colder. "The system shows multiple rejected transactions. This triggers an automatic review for potential—" A pause. "Issues." Loretta reached for her files, decades of careful record-keeping stored in worn manila folders. "I have all my statements, every payment cleared." "Ma'am, I'm just informing you of the situation. Given these circumstances, we're required to accelerate the standard notice period for potential property liens." The tea grew cold as Loretta listened to rehearsed phrases about policy requirements and protective measures. When the call ended, she sat very still, feeling the machinery of bureaucracy grinding toward her home, her sanctuary, the place Thomas had built with his own hands. Across town, Darius Johnson sat at a hotel desk, his laptop casting blue light across stacks of printed reports. Branch metrics scrolled across his screen. Transaction holds, override codes, fraud review flags. He'd been analyzing patterns for hours, and they were impossible to miss. The data told a story in clusters. Account restrictions concentrated in certain ZP codes, verification requests, targeting customers over 65, fee reversals that appeared and disappeared like ghosts in the system. It wasn't random. It wasn't even subtle if you knew where to look. He picked up his phone, dialing a number he rarely used. "Sarah? It's Darius Johnson. I need compliance data for the Harlan branch. Last 18 months. A careful pause. "I'll have to check protocols for that request, sir." "I'm CEO. You don't need to check protocols." "Even so." Her voice was professionally blank. "Given certain sensitivities, I'll need to route this through proper channels." Darius recognized the wall of polite deflection. "How long have you worked with Regional Director Matthews?" Another pause, longer this time. "I'm not comfortable discussing." "Thank you, Sarah. That's all I needed to know." He ended the call, adding another piece to the puzzle. The corruption went higher than Harlan. His screen pinged with a restricted internal communication. One of the back-channel messages Darius could still see, using his old compliance access. It was from Gregory Harlan, sent branch-wide and wrapped in the language of authority. The order was clear and unmistakable. No one was to discuss that morning's verification incident with anyone, inside or outside the bank. Any questions were to be routed directly to management, and staff were reminded that all customer interactions were confidential and protected by policy, Harlan's way of sealing the moment in silence. At her teller station, Nina Alvarez read the message twice, her stomach churning. The memory of Loretta's face as the check turned to confetti haunted her. She'd seen Harlan's verifications before, but never so public, never so cruel. Her finger hovered over the delete key, knowing she should erase it like all the others. Instead, she pressed print. The light outside Loretta's windows deepened to purple. She moved through her evening routine, checking the mail, watering her African violets, setting out clothes for tomorrow. but every sound made her jump. A car door, footsteps on the sidewalk, a dog barking 2 houses down. She double-checked her front door's locks, then did it again. The house seemed to creak differently, as if it knew its fate hung by threads. From her bedroom window, she could see the oak tree Thomas had insisted on saving when they built here. Its branches spread wide, sheltering half their yard. How many more sunsets would she watch through those leaves? In his hotel room, Darius stared at his mother's voicemail notification. He'd listened 3 times already, hearing the steel beneath her gentle words. The branch data glowed on his screen. Account flags, review triggers, automated notices. All the weapons of modern banking aimed at her door. "They're targeting my mother," he whispered to the empty room. The words tasted bitter, but saying them out loud made them real, made them actionable. Tuesday morning stretched thin and sharp across the bank's glass facade. Darius Johnson sat in his parked car, baseball cap pulled low, watching the front doors through tinted windows. His laptop hummed beside him, ready to log every transaction code, every override, every digital fingerprint. He'd arrived an hour before opening, positioning himself with a clear view of both entrances. Staff trickled in first. Nina Alvarez with her shoulders already tense, security guards adjusting their earpieces, tellers clutching coffee cups. Gregory Harlan strode through the parking lot like he owned it, his polished shoes reflecting morning light, his tie a precise slash of authority against his crisp shirt. At 9:05, Loretta Mae Johnson approached the bank. She wore a different dress today, navy blue with small white dots, pressed sharp enough to cut. A manila folder rode in her arms like armor. Even from this distance, Darius could see how she'd steeled herself, chin lifted, each step measured and deliberate. Inside, fluorescent lights cast their familiar pallor. The lobby smelled of lemon cleaner and fresh printed deposit slips. Harlan spotted Loretta immediately, his face arranging itself into a mask of exaggerated concern. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, voice dripping artificial sweetness. "I wasn't expecting you back so soon after yesterday's unfortunate situation." Loretta opened her folder with steady hands. "I have copies of everything. The settlement letter, the endorsement verification, my account records." "Oh, dear." Harlan's smile sharpened. "I'm afraid we can't help you today. Your account is under review for irregular activity." "What irregular activity?" "Please, lower your voice." He stepped closer, crowding her personal space. "We take security very seriously here." The security guard, Barnes, according to his nameplate, drifted closer, deliberately bumping Loretta's shoulder as he passed. She stumbled slightly, but caught herself, refusing to give ground. "I need to speak with someone about my escrow payments," Loretta said, voice clear but controlled. "Louder, please," Harlan said. "I can barely hear you." Nina stepped forward from her teller window, paperwork in hand. "Mr. Harlan, we could process a standard deposit verification. I can call the issuing bank." "No exceptions." Harlan's tone sliced through Nina's suggestion. "Return to your station." Darius shifted position, moving to a seat near the loan desk. From here, he could see the teller's screens reflected in the glass partitions. Transaction codes flickered. Nina trying to access override protocols, getting blocked, trying again. Harlan controlled his staff through tiny gestures. A sharp look here, a slight head shake there, fingers drumming on countertops in warning. "Mrs. Johnson," Harlan continued, "if you can't follow basic instructions, you'll need to leave. We can't help customers who create disturbances." The word disturbances hung in the air like smoke. Other customers shifted uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by their deposit slips. "I'm not creating anything," Loretta said. "I'm standing here, asking about my account. And I'm telling you it's under review." Harlan's voice carried just enough for the whole lobby to hear. "Unless you'd prefer we discuss the fraud indicators?" Nina's fingers froze above her keyboard. Darius watched her screen reflect a series of attempted account access codes, each one denied, each denial logged with Harlan's override signature. The security guard made another pass, this time letting his equipment belt brush against Loretta's arm. She stepped aside, but there was nowhere to retreat that didn't feel like surrender. "Perhaps you should sit down," Harlan suggested, gesturing to the chairs near the door. "You seem unstable." "I'm perfectly stable," Loretta replied. Her voice carried the same tone she used in church when correcting young ushers, gentle but immovable. "Then you understand that creating scenes won't help your situation." Harlan's smile never wavered. "We have strict protocols for suspicious accounts." Nina tried one more time, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Johnson, if you'd like to wait, I could—" "Miss Alvarez." Harlan didn't look at her. "One more word, and you can collect your things." Outside, through the bank's windows, life moved normally. Cars passed. Pedestrians checked phones. Clouds drifted across the morning sky. Inside, time stretched like pulled taffy, sticky and tense. Loretta squared her shoulders, gathered her folder, and turned toward the door. Her knees wanted to shake, but she kept her spine straight as steel. Near the exit, Nina had slipped from behind her counter, offering a quiet presence of support. "I'm not giving him the satisfaction," Loretta murmured, just loud enough for Nina to hear. Darius waited until his mother had left before rising from his seat. He moved carefully through the lobby, phone angled to capture the security camera positions. Each lens told a story. Coverage areas, blind spots, what would and wouldn't be recorded. His gaze fell on the trash bin where yesterday's shredded check had landed. It sat empty now, freshly lined with clean plastic. The evidence gone, like it had never existed. But Darius knew better. In banking, nothing truly disappeared. Every transaction left traces. Every override created logs. Every pattern, once you knew where to look, told its own truth. The midday sun beat down on Harlan Community Bank's parking lot, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirror. Behind the last row of cars, Nina Alvarez paced in tight circles, her navy uniform already showing sweat marks. Her hands trembled as she checked her phone. Lunch break timer ticking down. 20 minutes left. Loretta approached from the bus stop, her manila folder still clutched tight. The morning's confrontation had left invisible bruises. Her shoulders carried the weight of Harlan's words, her steps careful like someone crossing thin ice. "Mrs. Johnson," Nina whispered, glancing over her shoulder at the bank's windows. "Over here, please, by the hedge." They moved into the shadow of overgrown bushes, away from security cameras' blank stares. Nina's name tag caught the filtered sunlight, dancing with her rapid breathing. "I shouldn't be out here," Nina said, voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't watch this happen again." "Again?" Loretta's question hung in the humid air. Nina nodded, fingers twisting her lanyard. "Mr. Harlan, he has a system, especially with older customers, especially—" She swallowed hard. "Especially certain neighborhoods." "Tell me," Loretta said softly. "He flags accounts for review. Documents get misplaced. Verification keeps failing until fees stack up." Nina's words tumbled out like she'd held them too long. Sometimes people just give up, walk away, leave their money behind because fighting hurts too much. A quiet figure emerged from between parked cars. Darius, still in his baseball cap, moving like someone who understood the value of staying unnoticed. He kept his distance, just close enough to hear, presenting himself as nothing more than a concerned customer. "Ma'am," he said to Loretta, careful not to reveal their connection, "I saw what happened inside. Would you mind if I listened?" Loretta, focused on Nina's revelations, barely glanced at him. She didn't recognize her son through the fog of anxiety and determination clouding her vision. She just nodded, grateful for any witness. Nina pulled a small notepad from her pocket. "I wrote down things you'll need. The branch's direct line, not the public one they give out. Transaction codes Harlan uses to flag accounts." Her pen scratched quickly. "And this name, Pamela Rourke, regional executive. She protects him." "How?" Darius asked, his voice neutral. "Complaints disappear when they reach her desk. Staff transfers get denied. Problems just... Nina made a vanishing gesture. She visits sometimes. They have lunch. Laugh about difficult customers who don't understand policy. Loretta accepted the torn notepad page, folding it carefully. Why are you helping me? Nina's eyes darted toward the bank's glass front. Because I'm tired of being scared. We're all scared. Her uniform seemed to hang heavier. Harlan controls everything. Schedules, hours, performance reviews. He marks people as non-compliant if they question anything. Like yesterday, Loretta said, when you tried to help. He cut my hours last month when I processed a hold release without his approval. Said I was compromising security protocols. Nina's laugh held no humor. The customer was just a grandmother. Her pension check was late. Darius stepped closer, maintaining his role as concerned stranger. His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone who knew exactly how much weight each word carried. Miss Alvarez, if you tell the truth about what you've seen, will you stand by it? Nina's hands stopped shaking. Something settled in her expression, fear giving way to a different kind of trembling, the kind that came with choosing to be brave. Yes, she said, then louder. Yes, I'll stand by every word. A car alarm chirped nearby, making Nina jump. She checked her phone. 5 minutes left on break. I have to go, she whispered. But Mrs. Johnson, don't let them break you. Don't let them make you invisible. Loretta reached out, squeezed Nina's hand once. Thank you, child. Nina hurried back toward the bank's side entrance, her steps quick, but her spine straighter than before. Through the glass, they could see Harlan at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, smiling like a man who never doubted his power. Darius waited until Nina was inside before stepping away from Loretta, maintaining their temporary stranger status. He moved between cars until he was out of sight, phone already in hand. His fingers flew across the screen, typing a message to his audit team that would start an avalanche. Start a forensic hold, right now. The midday heat pressed down, but Loretta stood in the parking lot a moment longer. She unfolded Nina's note, memorizing numbers and names. Around her, customers came and went, cars pulled in and out. The bank's facade gleamed in the sun, everything normal on the surface. But beneath that surface, gears had begun to turn. In Nina's shaking hands, in Darius's quiet questions, in Loretta's determined grip on that folded paper, small acts of defiance gathered like storm clouds on the horizon. The bank's logo caught the sunlight, throwing shadows across the pavement. Inside, Harlan's office light blazed like a warning. But now Loretta held something he couldn't rip up or flag for review. The truth, written in a young teller's hurried handwriting, backed by a quiet stranger's promise of justice. The hotel room's air conditioning hummed steadily as Darius Johnson transformed room 412 into a digital command center. The desk lamp cast a harsh glow over his laptop screen, while documents fanned across the king-size bed like fallen leaves. Each paper represented a piece of the puzzle he was determined to solve. His fingers moved across the keyboard with surgical precision, pulling up branch transaction logs from the past 6 months. The screen's blue light reflected in his tired eyes as patterns began emerging from the data. Ugly truths hidden in mundane spreadsheet cells. Filter by zip code, he muttered, typing commands. The results painted an unmistakable picture. Account holds clustered in neighborhoods like his mother's, predominantly elderly, predominantly black. Fee reversals denied at triple the rate of other areas. Fraud investigations initiated without supporting documentation. Darius reached for his notepad, already half full with observations. They're not even trying to hide it, he wrote, underlining the words twice. The branch's internal messaging system revealed conversations wrapped in corporate speak, but dripping with prejudice. High-risk profile detected. 65-plus account holder from Valley Heights area. Behavioral concern noted. Customer resistant to enhanced verification. Flag for aggressive review. Multiple large deposits from settlement source. Each note carried Harlan's digital signature, each one targeting someone like his mother. Darius's jaw tightened as he copied the messages to a secure folder. The timestamps told their own story: holds placed within minutes of customers leaving, reviews initiated faster than policy allowed, fees assessed before notification periods expired. His phone buzzed. 8:45 p.m. Time to check on his mother without revealing his undercover presence at the bank. He dialed, keeping his voice casual. "Mama, how are you holding up?" Loretta's voice came through tired but trying to sound strong. "I'm fine, baby. Just tired of all this. Tell me what you're feeling. Really feeling." A long pause filled the line. "Ashamed," she finally admitted. "I never wanted to need your help like this. Never wanted you to see me." Her voice cracked slightly. "See me begging for what's mine." Darius pushed back from the desk, his free hand clenching. "Mama, listen to me carefully. Needing help isn't weakness. They're counting on shame to make you give up. That's how they win." "I know, but—" The doorbell's chime cut through their conversation. "Hold on, someone's here." Darius heard her footsteps, the door opening, papers rustling. His mother's sharp intake of breath told him everything before she spoke. "Another letter," Loretta said, her voice smaller now. "More review required. Additional verification needed." Paper crinkled as she gripped it tighter. "They're saying my account might be frozen during the investigation." Darius kept his voice steady, though his free hand curled into a fist. "We're going to fix this, Mama. I promise you that. They picked the wrong family to target." "I just want my home safe," she whispered. "Your daddy built this place. Every nail, every board." Her breathing hitched slightly. "I can't let them take it." "They won't," Darius assured her, even as he pulled up another screen of damning data. "Get some rest. I'm handling this." After they hung up, Darius dove back into the records with renewed focus. Credit decline rates, withdrawal hold patterns, compliance override codes. Each query revealed another layer of systematic discrimination dressed up as policy. Across town, in a leather-wrapped office chair, Gregory Harlan poured his third bourbon of the evening. His phone sat on the desk, speaker on, as he regaled a colleague with his latest victory. "You should have seen her face," he laughed, ice cubes clinking. "These people never learn. They think they can just walk in here, wave around some settlement check." "Any pushback?" his friend asked. "Please." Harlan took another sip. "She'll quit before the week's out. They always do. Can't handle the proper procedures." He emphasized the last words with mocking precision. Meanwhile, Darius's hotel room had become a sea of data. Bank statements covered the bed. Policy manuals littered the floor. His laptop screen showed multiple windows of transaction logs, each telling the same story from a different angle. The wall clock ticked toward midnight as Darius compiled everything into a single encrypted file. Each piece of evidence carefully labeled, each pattern documented, each violation time-stamped. His cursor hovered over the file name field for just a moment before he typed, "Johnson, Mother." The save confirmation blinked on screen as another piece of paper caught his eye. A shred of his mother's check, preserved in a clear evidence bag. In the dim hotel light, her signature was still visible on the fragment, a reminder of everything at stake. Darius sat in his hotel room, phone pressed to his ear, his CEO authority no longer hidden. Morning sunlight slanted through the window as he spoke with precise, measured words to the compliance department. "This is Darius Johnson. I need immediate action on suspicious pattern activity at the Harlan Community Bank branch." His tone carried the weight of his position, each word carefully chosen. Multiple incidents of document destruction, selective verification protocols, and possible discrimination in settlement check processing. The line clicked, transferred, clicked again. A new voice emerged, smooth, controlled, wrapped in authority like expensive perfume. "Mr. Johnson, this is Pamela Rourke, Regional Executive for the Southeast Division. I understand you have some concerns." Darius's fingers tightened on his pen. He recognized the name from Nina's warning, Ms. Rourke, I'm requesting immediate preservation of all security footage, transaction logs, and internal communications from the branch. Of course, we take all concerns seriously, Pamela replied, her tone suggesting anything but urgency. However, we need to be thoughtful about our approach. Moving too fast could cause unnecessary reputational damage to the institution. Darius watched dust motes dance in the sunbeam crossing his desk. There's already damage being done. We have multiple incidents of— If you're referring to the situation with Mrs. Johnson, Pamela interrupted smoothly, I believe there's been some misunderstanding of our standard procedures. Many older customers struggle with our verification protocols. The patronizing note in her voice made Darius's jaw clench. She didn't realize she was speaking to Loretta's son, the CEO who had witnessed everything. He kept his voice level. I want all footage preserved, today, particularly from Monday morning between 9 a.m. and noon. Perhaps we should schedule a proper meeting, Pamela suggested. I have availability next week. We can discuss your concerns in detail, review our compliance frameworks. The footage needs to be preserved now, Darius insisted. Not next week. Mr. Johnson, Pamela's voice cooled slightly. I appreciate your enthusiasm for compliance, but rushing into things rarely serves anyone's interests. Let's take the appropriate time to— Is there a reason you're resistant to preserving evidence? Darius asked quietly. A pause stretched across the line. When Pamela spoke again, her words were careful, measured. I'm simply suggesting we follow proper channels. I'll have my assistant send you some meeting options for next week. Across town, Loretta's phone rang. She set down her tea, hands trembling slightly as she answered. Hello? Mrs. Johnson, this is Marcus Weber from the Fraud Prevention Department. The voice was clipped, professional. We need to verify some recent activity on your account. Loretta sat straighter, though no one could see her. What sort of activity? Ma'am, I'll be asking the questions, the voice replied. We have concerns about potentially fraudulent attempts to negotiate unauthorized instruments. You mean my settlement check? Loretta's voice wavered slightly. The one your manager destroyed? Please answer only what I ask, the voice cut in. Have you ever been party to any legal proceedings against financial institutions? The settlement was legitimate, Loretta insisted. I have copies. Yes or no, ma'am? Loretta felt her throat tighten. Yes, but have you ever used alternate identification documents? What? No, Have you ever allowed others to conduct transactions on your behalf? I don't understand why. Yes or no, Mrs. Johnson? Each question felt like a small cut. Death by paper cuts, designed to make her feel criminal. Small. Wrong. Loretta's hand shook as she held the phone, tea growing cold beside her. At the bank, Nina Alvarez kept her head down at her teller window, but she couldn't help seeing Gregory Harlan through her peripheral vision. He stood at his desk, phone to his ear, smiling like a well-fed cat. His voice carried just enough for her to catch fragments. Handling it exactly as discussed. She won't last. Procedure is on our side. Nina's stomach churned as she processed another customer's deposit. She thought of Loretta's dignity in the face of Harlan's cruelty, of the shredded check that represented someone's hopes scattered across marble floors. Back in his hotel room, Darius stared at his computer screen, reading Pamela Rourke's follow-up email. Dear Mr. Johnson, as discussed, we take all compliance concerns seriously, and will be happy to review any specific issues during our meeting next week. In the meantime, please be assured that all branch activities are conducted according to established risk management protocols. Regarding your preservation request, our technical team will need time to evaluate system capacity and retention parameters. We appreciate your patience as we work through proper channels. Best regards, Pamela Rourke, Regional Executive, Southeast Division. Darius leaned back in his chair, the pieces clicking into place. Pamela's polite deflection, the strategic delays, the immediate pressure on his mother. It wasn't just Harlan anymore. The rot went deeper. So you're in it too. he said quietly to the empty room. The words hung in the air as sunlight continued to stream through the window, illuminating the stack of evidence he'd gathered. Transaction logs, pattern analyses, Nina's testimony, and that precious fragment of his mother's destroyed check. All pieces of a puzzle that was becoming clearer by the hour. The Thursday morning sun streamed through Harlan Community Bank's tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The lobby buzzed with customers, their conversations creating a steady hum beneath fluorescent lights. Security cameras blinked silently from their corners, recording everything. Loretta Mae Johnson stood at the counter, her spine straight, despite the exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. The manila folder in her hands contained copies of everything. The settlement letter, her ID, proof of residence, though she knew it wouldn't matter. Her Sunday gloves were back on, not for church this time, but as armor. Gregory Harlan emerged from his office like a performer taking the stage. His suit was pressed sharp enough to cut, his smile practiced and poisonous. He approached the counter with measured steps, positioning himself where his voice would carry best. "Mrs. Johnson," he drew out her name like he was teaching a child. "I see you've returned. Again." The nearby conversations dimmed. Customers pretended not to watch, but their eyes kept sliding over. Security shifted closer, hands clasped in front of them. Ready. Nina Alvarez's fingers hovered over her keyboard, her face pale. She'd seen this show before, knew its cruel choreography. Other tellers kept their heads down, suddenly fascinated by their screens. "I have my documentation," Loretta said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She placed the folder on the counter. "Everything you asked for." Harlan didn't even glance at it. Instead, he raised his voice, ensuring it would reach the farthest corners of the lobby. "Ma'am, as I've explained repeatedly, we cannot and will not reward fraudulent behavior." The word fraudulent landed like a slap. Several customers stepped back, not wanting to be associated with whatever was happening. A woman pulled her purse closer to her body. "There's nothing fraudulent," Loretta said. But Harlan spoke over her. "You've presented suspicious documentation, attempted unauthorized transactions, and now you persist in disruptive behavior." His smile widened as color drained from Loretta's face. "I'm afraid if you continue, we'll have no choice but to—" The main doors opened, letting in a shaft of bright sunlight. A man entered, not in an expensive suit, but in clothes that fit him like they were made for this moment. His posture was straight, his steps measured, his eyes focused and winter cold. Nina recognized him first. Her hand flew to her mouth. Darius Johnson walked to the center of the lobby, each step deliberate on the marble floor. He stopped where everyone could see him, where cameras could capture every word. "Gregory Harlan." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It was the voice of someone who knew he didn't need to shout to be heard. Harlan's smile flickered. "Sir, I'm in the middle of—" "I'm Darius Johnson, CEO of this bank." The lobby fell silent. Even the printers seemed to pause. Harlan's face performed a complex dance: confusion, realization, horror. The smile collapsed entirely, leaving behind something naked and afraid. "Sir, I don't understand," Harlan stammered, but Darius cut him off with a raised hand. "Security," Darius called, his tone precise. "Please ensure all cameras in this branch remain operational. I want footage from the past week preserved. All of it." The guards glanced at each other, then nodded. "Ms. Alvarez," Darius continued, turning to Nina, "please print a complete transaction log for this branch, focusing on verification, overrides, and holds. Have it on my desk in 10 minutes. Nina's hands were already moving. "Yes, sir." Darius turned back to Harlan, who had begun to sweat visibly. "Mr. Harlan, you are placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Surrender your keys and credentials to security. Your office will be sealed for audit." "But, sir," Harlan's voice cracked. This woman, Darius cut in, his voice carrying steel, "is Loretta Mae Johnson, my mother." A collective intake of breath swept through the lobby. Customers who had been pretending not to watch now stared openly. One woman covered her mouth. A man in line whispered, "Oh no." Loretta swayed slightly, her gloved hands gripping the counter. All week, she'd seen that quiet man watching, helping, gathering evidence, and it had been her son all along. Her Darius, the little boy who used to count coins in his piggy bank, now stood as the CEO, bringing justice with quiet authority. "Mom," Darius said softly, turning to her. His voice carried something the lobby had denied her all week. "Respect. I'm sorry you had to experience this. It ends today." Tears threatened, but Loretta blinked them back. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and nodded. Dignity wrapped around her like a cloak. Security approached with a box for Harlan's belongings. The branch manager's movements were mechanical as he removed his ID badge and reached for his keys. His face had gone from red to gray, hands shaking as he emptied his pockets. Darius watched every movement, his expression unchanging. "Security will escort you to your office. You will surrender all bank property and leave the premises immediately." The lobby remained frozen, witnesses to the fall of a man who had wielded policy like a weapon. Now that weapon lay shattered at his feet. As security led Harlan toward his office, he glanced back once. His eyes met Loretta's, then Darius's, and something dark flickered there. A promise, a threat, a refusal to accept defeat. But Loretta stood straighter, her gloved hands steady now. Let him look. Let him threaten. She had her dignity, her truth, and her son. The machinery that Harlan had used to grind people down was about to be dismantled, piece by cruel piece. The kitchen light cast a soft glow over Loretta's worn tablecloth, her untouched tea growing cold beside a stack of banking documents. Steam rose from the cup, curling in the evening air like a question mark. Outside her window, the setting sun painted long shadows across her small, well-tended yard. The yard her late husband had maintained with such pride. Darius sat across from her, his jacket draped over a kitchen chair, his phone on speaker in the center of the table. His voice remained measured, professional, even as his fingers drummed against the wood with carefully controlled tension. "The suspension was procedurally correct," he explained to the corporate counsel's tinny voice. "We have documentation of multiple policy violations." The lawyer's response came quick and sharp. "Mr. Johnson, given the sensitive nature of these allegations and Ms. Johnson's connection to you, we recommend—" A sharp chirp from Loretta's phone interrupted them. She reached for it with trembling hands, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Her face fell as she read the message. "Darius," she whispered, her voice tight. "My accounts, they're locked." Darius leaned forward, brow furrowed. "What?" "Due to suspected fraudulent activity," Loretta read, each word bitter on her tongue. "Your accounts have been placed under administrative review. Everything's frozen." The corporate counsel cleared his throat through the speaker. "This is standard procedure when—" "Standard procedure?" Darius's voice carried steel. "My mother has banked here for 40 years. A knock at the door made them both jump. Through the front window, they could see the unmistakable outline of a sheriff's deputy on the porch, his badge catching the last rays of sunlight. Behind him, curtains twitched in neighboring windows as faces peered out, watching. "Mrs. Johnson," the deputy called, his voice carrying that false politeness that made Loretta's stomach clench. "Could you step out here for a moment? Just have a few questions about some banking activity." Loretta's hands gripped her teacup so hard her knuckles went white. She'd seen this before. How trouble could wear a badge and questions could become accusations. The neighbors would talk. Stories would spread. Shame would follow, even if nothing came of it. "I'll handle this," Darius said, standing. But before he could reach the door, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. Pamela Rourke's name flashed on the screen. He answered, putting it on speaker. "This is Darius Johnson." "Darius!" Pamela's voice flowed like honey over broken glass. "I just heard about this unfortunate situation with your mother. Such a sensitive matter requires careful handling. Perhaps it would be best if she took some time to rest while we work through the proper channels." Through the window, they could see the deputy shifting his weight, waiting. More neighbors had emerged onto their porches, not even pretending not to watch anymore. "What proper channels?" Darius demanded. The check was valid. The settlement was confirmed. "Oh?" Pamela's concern dripped with artificial sweetness. "Because we've received information suggesting altered instruments. We've had to contact the settlement issuer, of course. Just protocol." Loretta's hand flew to her mouth. "The settlement," she whispered. "If they convinced the issuer there was fraud, everything would unravel." The tax deadline loomed like a guillotine blade. Another knock, more insistent this time. "Take your time," Pamela continued smoothly. "These reviews can be quite thorough. Weeks, sometimes months. We want to be absolutely certain." Darius's eyes narrowed as understanding clicked into place. This wasn't random retaliation. This was orchestrated. The moment Gregory Harlan had been suspended, someone had triggered this response, using the bank's own security systems as a weapon. They weren't just trying to punish Loretta. They were trying to run out the clock on her property taxes. "Mrs. Johnson," the deputy called again. "It would be better to handle this now." Loretta stood shakily, straightening her blouse with dignity born of decades facing down polite intimidation. But Darius could see the toll in the tremble of her fingers, the tightness around her eyes. "I'll be right there," she called, her voice steady despite everything. Pamela's voice oozed through the speaker. "Of course, as CEO, you'll want to recuse yourself from this investigation. Conflict of interest, you understand? Let the process work as designed." As designed. The words hung in the air like smoke. The process that turned elders into suspects, that used time as a weapon, that wrapped discrimination in paperwork and called it protocol. Darius ended the call mid-sentence, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle twitched. "They tried to turn my mother into a suspect," he said, voice low and dangerous. "They're using the whole system, police reports, fraud alerts, account freezes, to make her look guilty." Through the window, they could see the deputy consulting his notebook, writing something down while neighbors gathered in small clusters, whispering. The street where Loretta had lived, respected for decades, now felt like a courtroom where she stood accused. "Baby," Loretta said softly, using the name she hadn't called him since he was small. "Maybe I should just let it go. Find another way." "No." Darius stood, buttoning his jacket. "That's what they want. They expect you to break, to give up, to feel ashamed for fighting back." He moved to the door, then paused, turning back to his mother. "You taught me never to let bullies win. Remember?" Loretta nodded slowly, squaring her shoulders. She thought of her locked accounts, her threatened home, the whispers that would follow her at church. But she also thought of all the others who'd faced Harlan's verification process, who'd been ground down by Pamela's proper channels. The deputy knocked a third time, more insistent now. The grandfather clock in Loretta's living room struck midnight, its deep chimes echoing through the quiet house. Darius Johnson stood at her front door, laptop bag slung over his shoulder and a portable scanner tucked under his arm. His tie was loosened, suit jacket wrinkled from the long day of battle. Deacon Raymond Briggs opened the door before Darius could knock. The older man's presence filled the doorframe with quiet authority, his gray-streaked hair catching the porch light. "Come on in, son," Briggs said softly. "Your mama's ready." The living room smelled of fresh coffee and lemon furniture polish. Loretta sat in her favorite armchair, back straight, despite the exhaustion in her eyes. A worn shoebox rested in her lap, its edges soft from years of handling. "I should have shown you this earlier," she said, fingers tracing the box's lid. "But pride's a funny thing. Makes you think keeping quiet is the same as keeping strong." Darius set up his equipment on the coffee table, the scanner's blue light casting shadows across family photos on the wall. "Whatever you've got, Mom, we'll use it." Loretta lifted the lid, revealing neat stacks of papers bound with rubber bands. "Your daddy taught me to keep everything," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Said institutions have long memories when they want to hurt you, but short ones when they need to help." She began laying out documents like playing cards. Bank statements yellowed with age, letters with official letterheads, receipts preserved in plastic sleeves. Each piece told a story of small injustices adding up over decades. "Look here," she pointed to a statement from 1989. "Sudden fees appearing. No explanation. When I asked, they said my account type changed. I never changed it." She pulled out another from 1995. "Here, they lost your daddy's deposit slip 3 times in 1 month. Almost cost him a contract payment." Deacon Briggs leaned forward, his own manila folder appearing from his briefcase. "Sister Loretta isn't alone," he said, spreading out more papers. "I've been collecting stories from the congregation. Pattern goes back further than anyone thought." Darius's fingers flew across his laptop keyboard, creating digital folders, typing notes. "Names?" he asked. "Dates?" "Everything." Briggs nodded. "Miss Ruby Thompson, 2002. They claimed her pension check was suspicious. Reverend Wallace's mother, 2008. Same branch, same verification game. Brother Marcus Jenkins lost his business loan over missing paperwork that turned up 3 months too late." The scanner hummed steadily as Darius captured each document. Loretta kept pulling more evidence from her box. Certified letters demanding explanations that never came. Notes from conversations with managers who suddenly couldn't remember meeting her. Dates when security guards followed her through the lobby. "They thought we were just taking it," she said softly, "but some of us were writing it down." Briggs reached into his folder and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping, carefully smoothing its creases. "Almost missed this one," he said. "Local paper, 2010. Small article about the bank settling discrimination claims. Got buried on page 6, but look who signed off on the agreement." Darius scanned the article, his eyes narrowing. Pamela Rourke. "Same woman," Briggs nodded. "She was branch manager then. Got promoted right after, moved up to regional executive. Story disappeared, but the pattern stayed." Loretta's phone buzzed. A text from Nina Alvarez. Her hands shook slightly as she read it aloud. "They're watching me at work. Harlan's friends saying I'll lose my job if I keep talking. What should I do?" The room fell quiet. Loretta closed her eyes for a moment, then typed back slowly, speaking each word. "Baby, truth is heavier than fear. Carry it anyway." She looked up at Darius. "That girl's risking everything because she knows right from wrong. We can't let her stand alone." Darius nodded, scanner still humming. "Each document we preserve is another piece of armor for her, and everyone else they tried to silence." The night deepened as they worked. Briggs made fresh coffee. Loretta sorted through decades of careful documentation. Darius built their case file by file, converting paper memories into unassailable digital evidence. More texts came from Nina, security footage from Tuesday, accidentally corrupted. But she had screen-captured Harlan's internal messages before they vanished. She sent them to Darius, her courage growing with each revelation. "Look at this sequence," Darius said, pointing to his screen. "Mom's account flags, holds, and reviews. They follow the exact same pattern as the cases from 20 years ago. Same timing, same language, same excuses." "Because bullies don't change their tricks," Loretta said. "They just dress them up in fancier words." The grandfather clock struck 5. Dawn's first light crept through the windows as Darius scanned the final document. His mother's box sat empty, its contents transformed into evidence that couldn't be shredded or lost or explained away. He created the master file, typing deliberately. Evidence, non-destructive hold. One click, and everything uploaded to secure legal storage, protected by federal banking regulations that even Pamela Rourke couldn't override. The morning light caught Loretta's face as she watched her son work. highlighting the quiet pride in her eyes. All those years of keeping records, preserving proof, her patience was about to become power. "What's next?" Briggs asked, standing to leave for early morning prayers. Darius closed his laptop with a soft click. "Now we show them what happens when you underestimate a woman who kept receipts." The sun rose fully, washing Loretta's living room in gold. She straightened the empty shoebox, smoothing its worn edges with gentle fingers. Decades of evidence had left her hands, but its weight remained, transformed from burden to weapon, from shame to strength. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the makeshift command center, a converted hotel conference room filled with laptops, screens, and the quiet intensity of people building a case. Darius Johnson stood at the center table, his suit jacket draped over a chair, shirt sleeves rolled up like a surgeon preparing for delicate work. Sarah Turner, his forensic audit lead, spread documentation across the table, while Martin Torres from outside counsel reviewed regulatory requirements. Through the window, they could see Nina Alvarez sitting in her car in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel as if anchoring herself to her decision. "Start the hold immediately," Darius instructed, his voice carrying the calm precision that had made him CEO. "Every system, every backup, every archive. Nothing gets deleted without triggering alerts." Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Initiating litigation hold protocols now. We'll mirror everything. Emails going back 5 years, transaction logs, override records, security footage archives. If they try to touch anything, we'll know." Martin adjusted his glasses, reviewing compliance statutes. "We need to notify the OCC and FBI Financial Crimes Unit. Pattern suggests systematic discrimination and potential evidence tampering." "Already drafted," Darius said, sliding over a document. "But we move quiet. The moment they know we're talking to regulators, they'll try to sanitize everything they can reach." A soft knock at the door made them all turn. Nina stood there, her bank nameplate still pinned to her blouse, fingers twisting the strap of her purse. Her eyes darted between the faces, looking for reassurance. "Come in, Ms. Alvarez," Darius said gently. "You're safe here." She sat at the far end of the table, shoulders tight. Sarah pushed a recording device forward, while Martin explained her whistleblower protections. Nina stared at her hands as she began to speak. "It wasn't just Mrs. Johnson," she said quietly. "Harlan had patterns, ways of handling certain customers. He'd signal security to stand closer, talk over people until they felt stupid, demand extra verification that wasn't in any manual." Darius leaned forward. "Tell me about the signals. If someone was unwanted, he'd touch his tie. That meant security should hover. He'd tap his desk twice if he wanted us to go extra slow with paperwork. He kept a special notation system in the account notes, asterisks and periods that meant, 'Make it difficult.'" Sarah's typing quickened as Nina continued, detailing years of systematic humiliation dressed up as procedure. How Harlan would schedule certain tellers who knew his rules when he expected those customers. How he'd write performance reviews based on who played along. The worst part, Nina's voice cracked, was watching people leave. They'd come in proud, standing straight. Leave, looking smaller, like they believed they deserved it. Martin documented everything, occasionally asking for clarification on dates and specific practices. Darius remained focused on Nina, noting how each revelation seemed to simultaneously burden and free her. "I can't promise this will be comfortable," he told her honestly, "but I can promise it matters. Every detail you're giving us is another piece they can't hide." In his office across town, Gregory Harlan paced, his administrative leave notice crumpled on his desk. He grabbed his phone, fingers jabbing at a familiar number. "Dave? Need a favor in IT. Just some routine cleanup. Old emails, transaction flags. You know how audits get messy." His laugh sounded hollow even to himself. Dave hesitated. "System's acting weird, Greg. Lots of new protocols." "Just do it," Harlan snapped. before they start digging. Back in the command center, screens suddenly flashed with alerts. Sarah straightened. Someone's trying to access email deletion protocols from a remote terminal. Attempting to purge transaction flags from the past week. Darius moved behind her chair, watching strings of code scroll past. Can you trace it? Better, Sarah smiled grimly. Every attempt is being logged and mirrored to secure storage. They think they're deleting, but they're actually creating perfect copies and documenting their own obstruction. Martin was already adding to his legal notes. Attempting to destroy evidence after a litigation hold. That's not just internal policy violation, that's criminal liability. Nina watched the screens, her eyes wide. Those are Harlan's transaction codes. I recognize the pattern. More alerts popped up as Dave in IT tried different approaches, each attempt captured and preserved like insects in amber. The system Darius had put in place wasn't just recording evidence, it was documenting the cover-up in real time. He's getting desperate, Darius observed, his voice carrying a quiet satisfaction. Desperate people make mistakes. Sarah's screen lit up with another notification. He's trying to access the security footage archives now, probably looking for the lobby incident with Mrs. Johnson. Let him keep trying, Darius said softly, watching the evidence stack up with each failed attempt. Every keystroke is another nail. Nina hugged herself, both terrified and relieved. What happens now? Now? Darius looked at the growing mountain of documented violations. Now we let them think they're winning, while they dig themselves deeper. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows as they watched Harlan's increasingly frantic attempts to erase his tracks. Each failed deletion, each desperate override attempt, each suspicious access pattern was meticulously logged and time-stamped. A final alert flashed across the screen. Another attempt to purge email records. Darius watched the notification populate in real time, his voice barely above a whisper. Got you. The fluorescent lights of the community hall cast harsh shadows across worried faces. Metal folding chairs scraped against linoleum as people packed in shoulder to shoulder, the air thick with tension and decades of unspoken grievances. At exactly 7 p.m., Loretta Mae Johnson entered through the side door, her Sunday best armor against what was coming. Darius walked beside her, Nina Alvarez trailing just behind, while Deacon Raymond Briggs brought up the rear like a guardian. The crowd shifted, recognizing Loretta. Some reached out to touch her arm or squeeze her hand as she passed. These weren't just neighbors. They were witnesses to years of policy wielded like a weapon. Standing room only, Deacon Briggs observed quietly, scanning the faces. Word got around fast. They took their places at the front table, microphones lined up like soldiers. Loretta smoothed her skirt, spine straight despite her trembling hands. Nina kept glancing at the door, as if expecting Harlan to materialize. You don't have to stay, Darius told her gently. Nina squared her shoulders. Yes, I do. At 7:15, Deacon Briggs stepped to the podium. The room fell silent as his deep voice filled the space. We're here tonight because what happened to Sister Loretta isn't new. It's just the first time they did it to someone whose son could fight back. Loretta approached the microphone next, her voice soft but clear. Monday morning, I went to cash a valid check. Money meant to save my home. She described the public humiliation in detail. Harlan's performative cruelty, the forced emptying of her purse, the shredding of her check like confetti. He wanted everyone watching to learn a lesson about knowing their place. Heads nodded across the room. An elderly man near the front wiped his eyes. Nina's turn came. She gripped the podium edges, knuckles white. I saw it happen. Not just to Mrs. Johnson, to others. We had codes, signals. If certain people came in, especially older black customers, Mr. Harlan would touch his tie. That meant make it hard. Make it hurt. Her voice cracked. He said it was policy. It wasn't policy. It was punishment. The double doors at the back swung open. A woman in an expensive suit strode in, flanked by two men carrying briefcases. Pamela Rourke, regional executive, her smile practiced and professional. "I apologize for the delay," she announced, claiming the microphone like it belonged to her. "We take community concerns very seriously, but I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." Mrs. Johnson was clearly overwhelmed by standard verification procedures. "Standard?" Darius stood, his quiet authority filling the room. "Is this standard procedure?" The wall-mounted screen flickered to life. Security footage showed Harlan ripping Loretta's check, his face twisted in a smile. The timestamp burned in the corner. "Or this." Another clip, Harlan signaling security to crowd an elderly man. Another, Nina being berated for trying to help a customer. Another, Harlan laughing with guards after a woman left in tears. Pamela's smile tightened. "Selective editing can make routine interactions appear—" "These are direct feeds," Darius cut in. "Unedited, time-stamped, and there's more." Transaction logs appeared, patterns of holds and reviews targeting specific customers. Internal messages with coded language about managing certain elements. Override reports showing systematic discrimination dressed as compliance. "And this," Darius continued, pulling up the day's alerts, "is from this afternoon. Multiple attempts to delete evidence after a litigation hold was in place. The system caught every attempt." Pamela's face drained of color. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Deacon Briggs stood again, unfolding a worn notebook. "I've kept names," he said simply. "Every person who came to me after being humiliated in that branch. Every elder who lost money to fees they couldn't fight. Every family pushed toward foreclosure by administrative errors." He began to read. "Martha Washington, age 78. William Turner, age 82. Rosa Martinez, age 75. Each name landed like a hammer blow. Some people stood when their names were called. Others called out, 'Present,' for those who couldn't be there. Through the windows, camera flashes sparked like lightning. Reporters gathered outside, drawn by rumors that a bank CEO was exposing internal corruption at his own institution. James Cooper, age 69. Sarah Davis, age 84. Pamela tried to interrupt. "This is becoming a spectacle. We should address these concerns privately?" "Like you addressed my mother privately?" Darius's voice could have frozen fire. "With fraud allegations and sudden account reviews? With deputies asking questions to intimidate her?" Nina stepped forward. "Tell them about the notation system, Ms. Rourke. The special marks in customer files that meant, 'Make them leave.'" Her voice grew stronger. "Tell them how you protected Mr. Harlan when we reported problems." The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Phones recorded everything. Some people were crying, others nodding in grim validation. "Regina Foster, age 77. Thomas Phillips, age 80. Pamela whispered urgently to her associates. One began frantically texting, while the other gathered their papers. A detective in plain clothes slipped in through the side door, notepad already open. He made his way to Darius, speaking low. "We'll need the complete audit package." "All of it." Deacon Briggs kept reading names into the night, each one a testament to what happened when policy became permission for cruelty. Loretta watched Pamela Rourke's practiced smile crack and crumble, finally revealing the truth behind the polite fiction of standard procedures. The clock struck 10 as Pamela and her team tried to slip out unnoticed. But there was nowhere to hide from the names that followed them into the darkness, each one an accusation, each one demanding answers. Saturday morning, sunlight streamed through Harlan Community Bank's glass doors, reflecting off the polished floor where Loretta Mae Johnson had been humiliated days before. Now she stood tall beside her son, Darius Johnson, as auditors wheeled in boxes of equipment and laptops. The weekend skeleton crew watched wide-eyed, whispering behind their hands. Nina Alvarez waited at her station, back straight, no longer trembling. She'd spent hours with investigators, providing details about Harlan's signals and codes. The weight of silence had lifted from her shoulders. "Good morning," Darius announced, his voice carrying across the lobby. "This branch is now under formal investigation. Please continue your normal duties while we conduct our review." Gregory Harlan emerged from his office, trademark smile frozen in place. He adjusted his tie, the same gesture he'd used to mark targets, and approached with manufactured confidence. "Mr. Johnson, surely we can discuss this privately." "No." Darius's word cut like a blade. "We'll do this right here, where you chose to humiliate my mother." The lead auditor stepped forward, opening a laptop. Security footage played silently on the screen. Harlan ripping Loretta's check, laughing as the pieces fell. Another clip showed him signaling guards to intimidate elderly customers. Document after document appeared. Override logs, flagged accounts, deletion attempts traced to his computer. "Your network credentials were used to access restricted files after hours," the auditor stated flatly. "Attempting to destroy evidence under litigation hold is a criminal offense." Harlan's smile cracked. "That's circumstantial. Anyone could have—" "I saw everything," Nina interrupted, her voice steady. "The signals, the codes, the special handling for certain customers. How you threatened our jobs if we helped them." Two security officers, not Harlan's usual allies, but corporate investigators, approached from behind. Harlan's eyes darted toward the exit. "Mr. Harlan," Darius said quietly, "you're terminated effective immediately. These officers will escort you to clear your desk. Any attempt to access bank systems or contact staff will result in additional charges." "You can't," Harlan sputtered. "I can." "I did. And we're not finished." The front doors opened again. Pamela Rourke strode in, heels clicking against marble, already speaking. "This is completely unnecessary. If you'll just—" "Ms. Rourke." Darius turned. "Perfect timing. You're suspended pending investigation into systematic discrimination and evidence tampering." Two plainclothes detectives followed her in, badges visible. "Ma'am, we have some questions about the retaliation protocols activated against Mrs. Johnson and others." Pamela's professional mask slipped. "I don't know what you're—" "We have the system logs," the lead auditor cut in. "Every flagged account, every review order, every override. The pattern is statistically impossible to dismiss as random." Loretta watched silently as Harlan was escorted to his office, security standing guard while he emptied his desk. No final speech, no handshake goodbye. Just the quiet death of unearned authority. Pamela went next, led away by detectives after surrendering her credentials. Her protests about proper channels echoed hollowly across the lobby. Darius addressed the remaining staff. "Effective immediately, all improperly flagged accounts will be unfrozen. Fee reversals will process automatically. Emergency checks will be issued today for any blocked funds." He paused. "And every threatened property loan will receive written confirmation of security." As if on cue, a courier entered carrying a leather portfolio. Inside was Loretta's restitution check, accompanied by official documents confirming her tax payment and the removal of all liens. She accepted them with steady hands, her dignity intact. Nina approached cautiously. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm so sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Loretta touched her arm gently. "You spoke when it mattered, child. That's courage." The morning light shifted, throwing rainbow patterns across the lobby where Harlan had performed his cruelty. Now he shuffled past carrying a cardboard box, escorted by security, his power stripped away by truth. As he passed, Loretta spoke just loud enough to carry, "You ripped paper. You couldn't rip my name." Harlan flinched but said nothing, hurrying toward the exit like a shadow fleeing dawn. Throughout the day, auditors combed through records while staff processed emergency corrections. Phones rang constantly as word spread about the investigation. Darius personally reviewed each restitution case, ensuring no detail was missed. By late afternoon, the lobby had transformed. Gone was the atmosphere of fear. Customers entered without hesitation, greeted by staff who no longer flinched at shadows. A thick binder appeared on the main counter, its cover embossed with gold letters, "The Loretta May Integrity Initiative." Inside were new policies, oversight procedures, and whistleblower protections, each page a guarantee that power could never again become permission for cruelty. As evening approached, Loretta sat on her porch, the warm light spilling around her like a blessing. Her home stood solid and secure, just as her husband had built it. Darius joined her, carrying the policy binder. "It's really over?" she asked softly. "Yes, Mama. They can't hurt anyone else now." The porch light caught the gold letters as Darius set the binder down, making them shine like truth finally brought to light. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.